Today we're going to add in player lives. So first I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to name that layer UI for user interface. I'm going to take my score and I'm going to change its layer to the UI layer. I'm going to lock my game layer. And then with my UI layer selected, I'm going to add in another text box. I'm going to change the text to lives. Change the color to something that I can see. It's probably not a bad idea to match the same font as your other text box. So if I click on my score, I'll see that I use Arial 28. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Remember, if your font is too large for the box, you'll have to resize the box so that it is visible. I'm going to position mine 20 across and 20 down. If I want to do the same thing for my other box, I would need to change the hotspot to the top right. And then for the position, Y can be 20, and instead of 1280, I would do 1260. And then it'll be 20 down and 20 to the right of the top right corner. And then you just need to make sure that your box is large enough so that you can have your colon, your space, and your number without it making it to the end of the box. So let's go to Event Sheet. First we need a variable, so let's do right click, add global variable. I'm going to name this variable lives. We'll start with 3. You can choose that to be whatever you would like. Then I need something similar to this score label here. So I'm going to add an action on start of layout for my text box that we did not name. Do set text, and the text here is going to be quotation mark, lives, colon, space, close quotation marks, ampersand, which is the and sign, shift 7. That connects your literal text with your variable. Start typing the name of your variable, which was lives. You'll see it here in the list. Double click it to select it and it will complete the name. And make sure that it's spelled the same as your declaration. Click done. Now when we run that, our lives should show up correctly on our screen. There it is, lives 3. Now every time the player is destroyed, we need to go to system. We need to subtract from lives the value of 1. Click done. I'm going to click on my text box over here and rename that to lives label while I think of it. You'll notice that when you change the name of something, it automatically changes it in your code as well. I'm going to copy that, and then I'm going to paste it. Make sure it is underneath where you subtract 1. If you change the text before you subtract, it won't actually update your label. Now when we run it and a monster hits the player, I should lose 1 life. Now all we need to do is restart when that happens. There are lots of ways to do this, such as creating a new layout, pausing the game before you rebuild the level. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to check to see if the player has any instances on the screen. I'm going to do that by doing system, and I'm going to compare 2 values. The first value I want is player.count. So we're going to get the number of players on the screen. If that is, I like to do inequalities, less than or equal to. It should be impossible to have a negative number of players, but just in case, we can cover for that scenario. So if it's less than or equal to 0, then we should do some things. And then what I want to do is I want to destroy the monsters. So monster destroy. Since this is not in the context of a collision with a monster, this should get all of the monsters instead of just 1. Do the same thing with the bullets. Destroy those. If there's any explosions going on, we'll also destroy those. Then I want to create a new player. So let's do create object. We want to create a player on layer 1, which is our game layer. Our x coordinate is going to be layout width divided by 2. Then we have layout height divided by 2, which will be in the middle of the screen because layout width is whatever the width of our layout is, which happens to be 1280. So half of that is 640. Half of 720 is 360. So if you put 640 and 360, you'll get the same thing. But by putting this, you never have to remember what your layout is. And if your layout size changes between levels, then this will automatically put it in the middle. So now if we run this, shoot a couple, and then whenever we hit them, the level restarts. Now we have the capability of going into negative lives, which is not what we want. So we need to fix that last thing. So we're going to add one more, system compare variable. So for this, it kind of depends on what you want. Do you want your last live to be when you have lives 1, or do you want your last live to be when you have live 0? If you want it to be 1, then you do less than or equal to 0. So once you get to 0, the game will be over. If you want it to be where 0 is your last life, then do less than 0. So as soon as it goes into negatives, then you would end the game. You would hit done. Then here's a good place to go to a new screen. So let's go to projects. Layouts, we're going to add a new layout, and our new layout can have its own event sheet, so we'll add an event sheet to it as well. We're going to use the same layout size, so 1280, 720. I'm going to add in my tiled background again, position 0, 0. The size should be the same as what it was used on the last one. And I'm going to add a text box. That on the screen, the text is going to say game over. Change our color. Change our font here. This is something you want to be very large. This stops at 72. I'm actually just going to put it in as 100. You're going to have to resize that box for it to be large enough. Place that where you'd like it on the screen. I'm actually also going to add a copy of my score label. So I'm going to go to layout 1. I'm going to copy my score label. Go to layout 2. And I'm going to paste that. And click where I want it. I'm going to place that under here, and I'm going to change my horizontal alignment to center. I'm going to go up to layout 1. I'm going to rename that to game. Layout 2, I'm going to rename to game over. Rename event sheet 1 to game ES for event sheet. And I'm going to rename event sheet 2 to game over ES for the game over event sheet. So I'm going to open up that event sheet. I want to copy my unstart of layout, copy that to game over event sheet. I'm going to paste it. I don't need live, so I'm going to erase that, but it will set my score label to my current score. Then I'm going to add an event for mouse on any click, add action system. I want to go to layout, and then I want to choose my game layout. So if I do any click, it will go to the game layout instead to restart the game. Now when you do this, your lives and your score are still going to be what they were before. So I'm going to have to add an action to set my lives back to 3. And I'm going to have to add an action to set value score back to 0. And now that our game over layout exists, when we have lives less than 0, we can tell our system to go to the game over layout as well. So let's take our score labels and put them underneath where we update our values. The next time we test it, it should work. Now let's add in some organization. I'm going to create a group called controls. I'm going to drag that right underneath our start of layout, and I'm going to move my mouse left button click and my every tick inside of controls. Then I'm going to add another group called monster, put that right underneath controls. Then I'm going to move the monster inside. When you move it inside, you'll get the little arrow. So right here is underneath, but if I move it to the right, I get that arrow that says it's going inside of its parent. So there, I also want my bullet collision with monster and my every monster timer seconds. Then I'll add one more group for game control. And I'll put in a description here. You'll see that when you have a description, it puts it right underneath there so that you know what it does. Put that right under monster. I'm going to add in my last few options under that. Now a lot of people like to use WASD as their controls. Let me show you how to do that real quick. Go into game, add in the keyboard. Then in controls, I'm going to add a new sub event. That's for when the keyboard key is down. I'm going to choose one of those keys, so W. Done. And then what I want to do is I want the player under 8 direction. I want to do simulate control up. So W is going to be up. Copy and paste this. I'm going to change W to A. I'm going to change up to left. Paste this 2 more times. Change A to S. S is down. Change this one to D. And D becomes right. Now when we run this, we can use our arrows to move, and we can also use WASD to move if you're more comfortable with that instead.